Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. That wasn't even the right order, but wherever you are and whenever you are, welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow, and I am here to bring you not only the answers on the community, but the answers behind the answers, the thought process, the journey of discovery, the learning, the reverse engineering that happens. Thank you for joining me. If you are joining me, I appreciate it very much. You can find this video on YouTube if you haven't found it already. Good morning to Carolyn Ramsport. Happy New Year to everyone. Before I forget, this is January 6th, 2020. 1980 is now 40 years ago. That's what makes me feel old. And it just goes on from there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the notifications to get the notifications when this goes live. I have fingers crossed that everything is working fine. The audio appears to be working. The video is working. I'm happy. We're off to a good start. The bandwidth is holding up. Hopefully those issues are long gone and in the past. Lots of struggling with various vendors to get this all put back together. And now let's keep going. So YouTube is one place you can find that, of course, where we have those on the ServiceNow community channel, and also over on Twitch. So sometimes YouTube is a little flaky and you need a backup plan. So use Twitch as your plan B. The videos on Twitch are only there for a couple of weeks, so plan accordingly. Good morning, I'm just going to go with AJ. We'll go with that. Good morning to everybody. There are some names that I do struggle with, and I apologize for that. If you have more than just a hello, how are you on the live stream, then certainly go over and post your questions. I try not to answer questions live on here unless it's part of the content on the community, because if I answer it here, it's hard to search, it's hard to find. Other people aren't going to go scrubbing through and say, where was that one question that Chuck answered? I saw it once on a video sometime years ago. The community is a much better system of record to keep track of your issues, your questions, your problems. Other people can search them out. Appreciate it. Aman, we'll go with that. Thank you for the correction. Live chat, it's a wonderful thing. Time for a nice sip of herbal tea. Oh, got some ServiceNow swag in the Christmas stocking this year. Same good old herbal tea. So let us progress through. Good morning, Neil. People are checking in. I am so happy that you are joining me this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are, what I said at the top of the show. So community.servicenow.com, that's what's right behind me. That's what we'll be using for some of this live content. This is unscripted. I'm going to be looking for things that are of interest where I can help. I am not an expert in all things ServiceNow. So you'll generally see me solving developer questions, integration questions, platform questions. That's where my expertise lies. So if I'm skipping over something, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I really have nothing valuable to contribute. I may subscribe to the questions to see what other people are answering there. Good morning, John. Good morning, Dave. People are checking in. Love it, love it, love it. Just beyond the community, of course, let's do some general rules. We have not done this in a while. If you are new to the community, please observe good community etiquette. This goes with observing, searching, learning the way the community goes, as with any online community, before you jump in and start asking questions. If you do have a question or problem, ask once. Find the appropriate sub-community or group, forum, whatever you want to call it, where to post this. If you've got a question about security, look for the security section. If you've got a question about scripting, developer is probably the best place. Discovery or service mapping, ITOM questions. There's a space dedicated just for that. So you will have a better chance of getting the right answer if you put it in the right space. It's a bit like going to the right department in a department store. If you go to the electronics department, start asking questions about fishing equipment, you're probably not going to get a lot of good answers there. So think of it that way and move on. Only post one question once. If you don't get the answer you want, wait a while. It might take a day or two for people to respond. But try not to broadcast into multiple forums and multiple times. It just makes it hard for people to answer and harder to find when they come back later. So if you are an expert and you've done this before, consider turning some of that content that you've observed and say, hey, I've seen people ask this question 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Why not turn that into a blog post and people can reference it and find it easier that way? gets a little bit of street cred for you too. You can get that reputation as an expert in the community. We'd love to see you do that. Morning, Shane. Hey, Drew. Good to see you online. Nasir, good morning to everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and watching. So those are some tips if you do have a little bit of expertise, and even if you've got an experience that you just want to share, a good blog post is always a nice thing to say, hey, here's how I did it, and here's how we're going to do it again. Here's how you might want to approach this. If you have not already done so, I invite you to go over to the developer portal at developer.servicenow.com and get yourself a free personal developer instance. Check out the scripting APIs. There's free learning plans, as you can see here. I don't know if my cursor thing is on right now. It's not. So I'll have to verbally point out where my cursor is and on my visual cue on there. You can get a free personal developer instance running any of the latest 3 releases. That at this point, that would be New York, London, or Madrid. I think London is out. We may not even be allocating those at the moment because we are so close at this point to having Orlando. It makes more sense to look forward. And Orlando will be early access, I'm told, at the end of this month, January 2020. So if you want early access to Orlando before it becomes general availability in March, go over to developer.servicenow.com, get your instance. You'll be notified when Orlando is available, and you can upgrade your instance before everybody else. Use that as a sandbox before you upgrade your organization's dev, test, and UAT environment to understand what features you're getting, what challenges you may have in upgrading, etc., etc. There's also a share portal where you can get free downloads. I know a lot of you have already seen this and know about this, but some people are new to the video, so I want to cover this just real quickly. This is user-contributed software, snippets, applications that I've put a number of things in there as well. A lot of fun. Take a look at Share. I do plan on showing something from Share, and I'll point that out when we get to that today. Fabian says, hello, Chuck. I'm currently trying to automate synchronization of data between 2 instances, data of CMDB CI server. Do you have any tutorial link to start somewhere, please? Quick answer to that. There's a new feature that came out in New York called IDR, Instance Data Replication. You might want to take a look at that. It is a pay-for service. It is specifically designed to quickly set up data replication between ServiceNow instances. You don't have to make a brittle REST API and keep that going and maintain different endpoints, and IDR takes care of a lot of that with simple configuration. So there are some enhancements, I'm told, coming out in the next release in Orlando. Look for those. But right now, IDR is probably your easiest and quickest solution. Yes, you could build something for cheaper. IDR is the, hey, we've already got it. Let's go forward. Okay, enough of that. That was a rapid fire question. Also available are meetups. You know what? I didn't show that, but you can look under events on the developer portal, and it will say, hey, there's a Madison meetup coming up tomorrow night. There's a Charlotte, North Carolina developer meetup coming up later this month, Minneapolis. So look here. If you don't see what you want, this also includes more than meetups. It's also got some of our webinars that are on there. Meetups are organized through meetup.com. If you're not already part of that, go over there, look for ServiceNow Developer Program. We've got over 21,000 people, it looks like, and chapters continue to grow. We're up to 63 chapters as of early. Let's put that title back on sorry, wrong keyboard. I got to be retrained. You can go to meetup.com/pro/ServiceNow Dev Program to be part of that. Look and see, is there a chapter near you? We got 63 of these things and growing all the time. So odds are that there is. If there isn't, let us know. We'd like to help you start one. These are run by developers, not run by ServiceNow. We can suggest content if you've got questions. We definitely have an application to help with registration and reimbursement. So we'll take care of all the ugly work. You take care of content, venue, and people will show up if we're lucky. And they don't all have to be, PowerPoint and developers. We've got some people that meet once a quarter or once every third meeting, whatever it is, in a pub or a bar setting to socialize and say, hey, what are you working on? What do you want to talk about for the next upcoming meetings? What's of interest? So look for that over at meetup.com. Moving right along, we've got other events available over at servicenow.com/events.html. Webinars, ServiceNow user groups. If you want something little bit of a difference between a ServiceNow user group meeting and a developer meetup. Developer meetup is for developers. They're going to be talking deep dive stuff, projects they're working on, scripting APIs, things of that nature. Whereas a ServiceNow user group or a snug is a wider gathering. You're going to have architects, you're going to have administrators, you're going to have developers, and project sponsors, platform owners. Every level of persona in the ServiceNow ecosystem is welcome to a snug. So you'll get a little bit different discussion about that. People will be talking about how they implemented their CMDB or GRC or a particular application, and that may or may not be of interest to the developers. So we've got that laser-focused developer meetup at developer.servicenow.com that you can check out. But for the rest of the events, webinars, knowledge is coming up. You can find that over at events.html at servicenow.com. Encourage you to take a look at that. Where are we going next? Oh, I don't know. Let me do a couple of clicks here and make sure I'm not off track. We also have, don't have any webinars to talk about in the queue at the moment. Let's get the right keyboard again. Any code that's written today will be available in GitHub over at bit.ly/sn-cls. That's ServiceNow Community live stream. Encourage you to take a look at that. I do also have a little booklet that I want to share. If you are not what I would call a pro coder, you don't do this for a living, or you know people in your organization who are power users who want to get started, go over to bit.ly/SN-NCAFD. That stands for No Code Apps for Dummies. This is a short little book. You can see, not very thick, 64, 65 pages of the why. Why do you want to build applications on the Now platform? Authored by me and Brad Tilton. Thank you very much, Brad, for the skeleton, the bones of this. I put some meat on those bones, and we launched this earlier in October. So Q4 2019. We plan on refreshing this periodically, and it goes into a lot of the best practices, the thought process you should go through before you even start an application. What are the questions you want to ask of your project sponsor or your owner? Or if you're doing this yourself, what questions should you ask of yourself to make sure that you've got this planned out? And then some of the implementation details, things like extending a table or not extending a table. These are things that we want people to understand if they are building an application. And then we go through the how will be done in a video series that I'm currently working on. So look for that coming soon. And we've also got events at Knowledge. So again, no code, low code persona, a very good information on that. If you are more of a pro code developer or you want to be more fluent in JavaScript, I invite you to go look at the JavaScript series that I put out a while back called Learning JavaScript on the Now platform. I couldn't even remember the title. But there's a bit.ly short link at the bottom of the screen you can see there. You know, I should probably put myself away for this one. That's all right. I've got my talking head on my static picture. So go over there, whole series of videos, lots of people getting involved, getting some education. You can zoom in and go, I need to learn more about objects, and learn about objects. If you need to learn more about the do-while loop or Boolean operators or arithmetic, there's an individual for that. If you just want to start at the beginning and go from syntax to scripted REST API at the end, you can do that as well. I invite you to go take a look at that. All right, the warm-up act is over. Let's continue on with the main show. Whew, that was a lot. Good morning, Kevin. Good to see you. One quick sip. Again, unscripted. I don't know what I'm going to find. Before I start, let me follow up on a couple of things that I did notice, because I have been doing some community and some projects that I want to blend into this content over the time. John says there's some really good ServiceNow specific content in there. It helped me big time. Oh, good. Glad to know. Because that was the intent of the JavaScript series, was not just to teach you JavaScript, but how ServiceNow takes care of some of those things, some of the APIs, some of the best practices you can do there. So I have a question from this weekend where Leonard said, how do I set the primary search field for a table? And Pradeep, I believe, helped him out and said, you know what, you can use the reference attributes to do that. This is a reference field. And what I noticed when he pulled up this picture was that he's got a child reference field here. It's referencing some table called checking reference data. And he's got just the created date. Now, there's two things that are happening here. I'm not quite sure which direction he's taking this discussion, because Pradeep said if you want to personalize the layout of this list, you can do that. And he gave him instructions on how to do that. I'll show you that in just a second. Over here, over at my developer instance, which I got from developer.servicenow.com. And if I go to, say, incident, I have a application that I use just for this. And I've got persons, and in each person record, I believe I have a reference field somewhere. Yeah, location is a reference field. And when I pop that open, there's a couple of things. I've talked about reference fields in the past, but let me give you a quick review. A reference field, if you're not familiar with it, is a field that points to a record in another table. It references that record. And the idea is, rather than having a form that has what is your name, what is your phone number, what is your location, who's your manager, all of this information, we can reference that information that's already built into the user record. Or if you need a location, it may have a location manager, it may have latitude and longitude, lots of information on a location record. Let's leverage that by this relation. That's what relational databases are good for. And this is the field that relates this location record to, in my case, this person record. So I can find out more about that by saying show location. It says I am pointing this table's location field. It is a reference field to the CMN location, which is one of our basic out-of-the-box tables for locations. Always encourage you to use whatever's available out of the box. And it has an attribute on it that says, don't allow to use U encode. Now, the value of what's stored in here is a sysid. Right now, there's nothing in there. And I can use show XML off of this form menu to see what are the values of each of these fields. And in my location, I currently have nothing, which is fine. There's nothing in there. But if I pick a value, I get, let's save that so that it actually saves it. 2 uppercase, I probably got a script. This is sort of a sandbox environment that and this application has been beat up with many examples. So if something like that pops up, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't mean there's a problem with the platform. It means there's a problem with what I've been doing. Now location doesn't just say /. It says I have a display value. This is the human readable value that it's going to show on that form. And it also has this, the actual value that's stored in the field. That's called a sysid or a GUID, a unique identifier in the system that says, this is the record I'm pointing to. Now that record has a whole bunch of fields. It has a name, it has a street, it has a state, it has a zip code, it has all kinds of information. You need to tell any record that's pointing to that table, what do you want to display when I show this in a field? Basically, what is the display value of that reference field? And that's what will show up here. Because if you displayed this 32 characters of hexadecimal, it's not going to mean much to a human being. Machine will be perfectly happy using that, but the humans, not so much. So that's what you put in there. And if I go to that table, CMN location, or I could just type location here. It's under user administration locations. There's 100 South Charles Street. And under configure table, I will see the table definition for this, and it's got all the columns. There's a display field on the columns to say which one of you fields are going to be the one I display in this. And if I filter out the falses, I should have one that's true, called name. Now here's a dirty little secret. You may, in fact, get rid of all the falses and there's nothing left. I go, well, how does it know? There is a built-in rule down at the Java layer of the platform that says if your table has a field called name, N-A-M-E, or U_name, or number or u_number, it will use that as a default. Don't ask me what happens if you have name and number or uname and unumber. I don't know. We could probably try it and find out real fast. There's probably an order of precedence that it takes for those. So if you don't see something that's set to true, look for a field called name or number, and it's probably going to be that instead. In this case, it is explicitly set to true. Even if I have a name or a number field, I still like to have a display value. I have, in fact, created fields called display value, which are a concatenation of a number of other fields. I may have a name, but I don't want to use that as the display value. I want to use my display value, which has some formulaic way of putting together maybe name and location, because you might have two people or two things with the same name. So an easier way to identify that. You can only define one display value per table. It's not like the location field on my person record can display one thing and the location field on the incident record can display another thing. That's a little confusing to the end user. Wait, what am I looking at here? Oh, it's the same data. Why am I looking at it two different ways? I know we've had people that have asked for that. It's just not going to happen. Okay. The only way you could change that would be to extend one of these tables and put a dictionary override to say, when I reference the child table, but you're going to get into some other issues when you deal with table extensions I'm not going to get into here. So that's a quick overview of reference fields and what they're after. If you wanted to change the layout of that, now by default, let's go back to user location locations. Name, contact, this list layout is also what's used as a default layout for related lists and reference lists. Now, the related lists, as you're probably well aware, are these lovely little lists at the bottom that have records related to this parent record, automatically available because we used a reference field. If you have table 1 referencing table 2, then table 2's records can show up as related items on table 1's records. That's what this is saying. And because we have a location field on a location record, we can have a parent-child relationship. Very easy to do. That being said, this list layout comes from the default that you've got on the default list layout. And when I go into the person record, this layout, when I click the magnifying glass, comes from that same default list layout. Now, you can customize these, personalize these, configure them individually. If I want to do that and say, you know what, this one obviously has been already because it doesn't have the updated field on it, or I changed it after this one was created. I could say configure list layout from here. Any column menu, configure list layout, and it says you can't do that. You're in a scoped app. This table belongs to a non-scoped app, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a protection to say, Chuck, don't mess with this or you're going to be impacting other applications that also use this reference list layout. If you want to change this, you better be sure it's in the global scope. Talk to your other process owners. That's a good thing. I want to be warned when I'm impacting other people potentially. And then I could configure the list layout with which columns I want in there. And that's kind of how I read into this one, because he's got, wrong one. He's got just the created field on here and went, it's not really the most friendly list layout to pick things from is what date the record was created. So put some other fields on there like name, or he's got a number or something in here that says Dahana That would probably be a good field, whatever's in Dahana the field that's displaying Dahana to put those fields on the reference field. Wow, that was a long discussion about that. Kevin asked, what did Kevin ask? I see a response. It says the no code apps for dummies link. Oh, yeah, I can put that on real quick. It is bit.ly/SN-NCAFD. Say to yourself, ServiceNow, no code apps for dummies. There you are. There was a second link I wanted to follow up on, and that was around glide aggregate. This person wanted to count all of the records in the CMDB CI structure that had 0 records. So they wrote out a glide aggregate, and I've never seen this class before, but order by aggregate. Don't know what that's for, but they did a group by sys class name. If I go to my personal developer instance into scripts background, global scope, let me make that just a little bit bigger, and paste in their script. Now, I don't have a whole lot of records in my CMDB, but it says you have 1 record in this table, 13 records in this table. And the thing to recognize about this is when it counts CMDB CI server, it is only counting those records that are in that class. CMDB CI server also has child classes. There's Unix server, there's Linux server, there's Windows server. There's other tables under there. So even though there's 19 records at the server table and there's additional other ones, that whole cluster adds up to 40 in my case. How do I know this? Well, he wanted the zeros in here. So we have to go and count each of the tables. And what I did for him on this post was to say, okay, there is a class, a script include called TableUtils that returns an array of all the tables that are extended from a specific class. So if I look at the output of that, I say table equals new TableUtils, list is get table extensions, and then let's put in a gs.info list. I get a lovely list here of all of these nice tables that extend from, I said, hey, I've got a list of tables. Now I can do a glide record on, or glide aggregate on each one of those. However, there's a hook in this. And it took me a while to see this. And I went, this looks like an array. So what is the length of that array? I said gs.info length equals list.length. Okay, just spit out what the length is. It says undefined. I said, is this an array or not? It looks like an array. What's going on? That's when I took a tip that we learned on Friday from Live Coding Happy Hour to use Explore. This is James Neal's lovely utility. Think of it as script background on super steroids. Very lovely debugging environment. And if you take an element and just leave the last line as that data item, it will tell you a lot about that data item. So let's run this script, and it says, hey, this is a Java object. It's not an array. Aha! This is because it's using some older application programming interfaces, some APIs, that return a Java object. That's why it's only available in global. You can't get this in a scoped app, unfortunately. But what you could do is write your own scoped app that calls this from global, etc., etc. We'll get into that another time. But it also has a lot of methods available with that object, one of which I noticed is toArray. And if I take that script now and say, our table list equals list.toArray, and then gsinfo table list.length, it should tell me that it is actually an array and has a length of, where's my output? No properties to display. Let me run that from scripts background. I think it's a little, might be just looking at it a little funny. Now it says 698. It is in there. I saw it on the next line. Okay. So it's right there. It's on the second line. There's a timestamp and then the output. The number was throwing me off. So there are 698 entries in that array. Turning a JavaScript array, I think there was another method like J to JS or something, but I might be thinking about it in another place. I can now do the glide aggregate to go over each one of those records. And he said, well, I'm not much of a scripter. Please help me with that. So I gave back this answer last night, which I will go through with you very carefully one line at a time. We'll do this in Explorer, nicer format. Okay, get the table utils, say how many tables extend CMDB CI, get all those table extensions, comes back in a Java array, convert that to a JavaScript array. I even print out the length again. Then there's a for loop that says for every element in that, there's a length to that, 698, go through each one of the 698 and set up a glide aggregate on that list. I'm just doing a count on however many records are in there. And if you get a valid count record back, just print it out. Now I've combined info and print, which is lovely, but don't crucify me on that one. This takes a few seconds to run because there's 698 tables, which it says right up here, but now I get the tables that have no records in them. That being said, I also noticed that CMDB CI server, which is not alphabetic down here, reports back. CMDB CI, I'm searching for it, CI server, there it is, has 40 records in it, not 19. So what's happened is it's counting not only those records, type the right table, if I go to CMDB CI server.list, it says, yes, sir, you have 40 records in this table. Oh, and note that 19 of them are in the server class. Some other ones are in the Unix server class, et cetera, et cetera. There's a Linux server, there's a Linux server. You get the idea. It's counting the parent class and the child class tables. Now, that's going to happen because I'm saying count all the server records. It goes, you know what, this is an extended table. Like task would be extended when you say, show me my work. It shows you all of the records in that class. That's what this is doing. Glide aggregate is counting all those records. If you wanted to count them individually, you would have to count all the endpoint tables and then do some crazy math to understand that they're extracted. There are methods to do that. I didn't want to get into that. So I put that in the explanation that this is an extension thing. It's going to happen. If your CMDB is what I would call pure and clean, I don't know if anybody's is like this, but why would you have just a generic server without identifying it as a Linux server, AIX server, Windows server, that kind of thing? If all of your CIs are on those endpoints, then you can count just the records on those nodes. There is a method in table utils that says, is this an extended table or is this not? If it's extended, like CMDB CI server, don't count the record. Just skip over it. Go to the next record. Do a continue statement in your for loop. If it's not an extended table, then you can count those records and repeat it back. So that would be one way around that. Happy New Year, Ed, and thank you. Whew. Let's do a couple of community records, see what's happening. This is supposed to be all about the community. Got lots to share. Been offline for a while. I haven't done one of these videos, so lots of ideas piling up in the back of my head. And yes, I'm gathering those up in a list on ServiceNow. All right. I like to start with the unreplied ones, see what's happening that nobody's responded to yet. 5 minutes ago, Visual Task Board and Azure DevOps Board integration. This one doesn't really feel like a developer question, but let's take a look just out of raw curiosity. Does anyone know if there's an integration exists, or is it possible to integrate VTB and Azure DevOps Work Item Board? Not sure what type of integration they're looking for, but I can say, may not be the answer, but there is a REST API for VTB. Let's make sure of that. I have a sneaky suspicion. REST API Explorer. And if you go to REST API Explorer, it's a great tool for developing integrations, third-party integrations that are inbound or outbound. Somebody who wants to communicate with ServiceNow. So let's go Table API. I might be thinking of something else. And I'm not finding it, so let's go to Docs, which I think is actually over here already. REST API VT. Maybe I'm imagining things. I swear I saw a VTB integration somewhere before. REST API. And when you get close enough, this little deal on the left tends to be very helpful. Debug, outbound, REST API reference. Agent, 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 agent. Import. You know what I might be thinking of? Service portal. I could be wrong. I swear I saw something on VTB that had to do with REST APIs. But got a lot of mixed up, mashed up information in my head over the holidays. You know what? I better not answer that one with that answer until I'm sure. Let's not pass out false information. Where'd my documentation go? Visual, task board. I don't really care for the release notes, but visual task boards. This is going to drive me nuts. I know where I saw it. I mean, I know I saw something. Configure, configure, configure. Oh, I know where it was. It was in Flow Designer. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. Darn. Okay, I'm going to put that one away. But I am curious to know what's going to happen. Auto close / cancel the associated change task if a change request is closed or canceled. That's an easy script. Can anyone please help me with the query below? Is there a baseline functionality to auto close / cancel any associated change task when a change request is closed or canceled? How do I implement it in our instance? Let's go check an instance real quick and look for business rules, system definition, business rules. On the table, change request, and cancel, conflict detection, update conflicts, refresh, restrict, system, actual, plan, start, calculate risk, read only, mandatory, validate, close, change, prevent, read only. 50 business rules on here. Let's look for close. Auto-populate, close, mark closed. What does mark closed do? It runs before and has no script and sets active to false. That's it. Okay. So I don't see anything out of the box. But it's a common request and easy to script. Create a business rule that runs after a change on change request, an update, excuse me, where active changes to false. I don't want to do it on a state field because there could be multiple states that change it to false and you want to do the same thing, whether it's closed or canceled. And if somebody adds a third state that has some sort of active equals false, this captures it. Okay, your script will look something like this. Note, this has not been tested. Let's go write it in VS Code. So A, I can publish it to the GitHub repo very quickly, and B, it's formatted nicely. So first thing is put in the framework for our business rule. And we want to get all the records. Glide record, change task table. Get all the records from change task. Task gr.add query. I really need the ServiceNow plugin on this thing. So it does the autocomplete for me. No, let's not restart in the middle of something. I want the change request table. It is change request, is it not? I'm going to validate that real quick. Change task.do should have a field on there called change request. Show it is called change request. I know there's a plugin that shows that for me, but I haven't really got warmed up to having the field label and the field name on the form at the same time. Current get unique value to get the sys-ID. So get all the records that have the same parent record. Let's also add a query where active is true. And yes, you could do add active query instead of that. I'm just being old school on this one. Well, task gr.next. So for every record that you find, task gr dot state equals, could take the current state if they line up. Okay, set these to whatever you want. 7, 4, 3. Set this to whatever you want. I'm also going to do a task gr.active equals false and task gr.update. And that's it. So for every record you find, put that there. That's my inbox. That's not what I was looking for. Bring up our little scripty editor for nicer formatting. Pick JavaScript. Slap that in there, and away we go. Easy as that. Anybody spot anything obvious that I missed? Great! And I think that's our first coin of the day. Next record. Refresh. Take a drink. Are we having fun yet? Thank you for joining us. I'm having fun. Feels like it's been forever since I did this. How do you share an instance of allocation workbench? That's in ITBM, not really one of my specialties. I'm going to change or create widget for different catalogs. Find out what they're looking for. Been doing some service portal work, so I'm learning a little bit as I go. I have 5 different catalogs, the classic service catalog for IT, another one for HR, FM, and 2 more. So in the portal, is there an easy way to use the SC widgets to show items and categories of the classic service catalog? But I want to create a page for every catalog with widgets. They show only the content of the catalog. Of course, I can clone the widgets and try to edit, but I think there would have to be an easier way. If I have to clone a widget, could somebody show me the rows or functions I have to change? Are you looking for different behavior on the widget? Not quite clear what your requirement is here. Are you looking for different behavior from the same widget based on which catalog it is part of? Or are you looking for different widgets for each catalog? If it is the latter, then I recommend, do widgets have roles? I can't remember now. Let's look under Service Portal, widgets. I know pages have roles. Look at this one real quick. Yes, they have a role. Recommend taking a look at the roles used for each catalog and applying them to the widgets to make them appear or disappear based on the roles. I probably misunderstood what they're asking for, but that happens all the time. I tend to need clear requirements. Don't forget, if you are posting to the community, put in the requirements. What is the business requirement here? Don't go after technical requirements right away. Say, hey, this is what I've got. This is what I've tried. This is, If you've tried something, share the code, share screenshots. Very, very helpful. ITSM, how do we copy over the multi-row variable set answers along with questions to the HR case payload or as comments? There's an article that Brad Tilton wrote about multi-row variable sets, and I thought copy was one of them. Let's see if we can find that real fast. So let's open that up. Go back to my main page, search for multi-row variable set. There should be a blog entry by Brad. Searchy, searchy, searchy. Let's look for blogs. There it is. Exploring the multi-row variable set. And Sri says, hi, Chuck. In the script you just posted, shouldn't we check if active is false because it's after business rule? Not necessarily, because the condition of that script, you're talking about this one? The condition of the script says, hey, run this when the change record active field changes to false. That will trigger the script. It says, hey, if the change record went to false, then I'm going to make sure that all of the children that are not currently closed or canceled get canceled or closed, whatever it is. So that is, we have a requirement to upgrade one of our catalog items and taught the multi-row variable set would fit the bit as it looks neat in comparative to the regular VS. Hence, I was able to implement it. However, the user submitted data does not get copied over to the payload / as the comments. Other details are captured. Can you please help to point out how to copy the MRVS answers to the payload along with its question? So my thing here is, here's our multi-row variable set, and I believe Brad includes some script. See my next post, scripting in the multi-row variable set. That's the one I was looking for. There we are. So variables.access list variables comes out as there. That's what I wanted. Oops, it's over here. You can copy them over with script. This article should be helpful. Sometimes I shorten it up so it doesn't say developer community, ServiceNow community. That just kind of bothers me. Great if I'm sending it in an email, but we're already in that community, Well, let's continue on. Another bell. Coin. And there's Brad's article. We got time for a couple more. You're welcome, Sri. James, good to see you. Thanks for joining. I'm going to go to the developer community, which is not fitting on my screen at the moment because of my font size. I want you guys to be able to see it, be able to read what's on the screen. Unreplied. Let's see what's coming in. Knowledge base approvals doesn't show content. Should if it's got a summarizer. Hopefully there's a picture. Hopefully there's a screenshot. Yes. Okay. Hello. Been working on sending approvals for the new comments and new article publishing. I've managed to send approvals by setting the manager for the knowledge base. And by that, the approver receives a notification on the service portal. When he opens the notification, it will show him the approval form, but it will only show the title. Can you confirm whether this is how it's supposed to be? Don't know about that widget specifically. Let's go take a look. I haven't dug into that set of widgets. So It's on the approval form, approval request for knowledge base, activity stream. So somewhere, I'm guessing, this is raw, unknown territory here. Service portal, widgets. I'm going to guess there's probably something called approval in there somewhere. Approval record, approval info, maybe? They didn't give a URL on here anywhere, did they? No. Approval request for blah, blah, blah. So let's go look at this. And, what do we got? HTML, is this even the right widget? Hard to tell. I can't glance at this and know what it is. NGF field label, field display value. If data is mine, state is requested, class equals question, NG click, approve, reject. So there's a couple of buttons here. Say approve and reject. Is that what we saw? Approve and reject. That's, looks like it's over here on the widget. Not seeing this part on the form. I'd have to go to the page and see what the page looks like. This one looks like it's going to be a little deeper than I've got a few minutes for here. I am interested in seeing what that's all about. And it feels like there may just need to be a summarizer. What a summarizer is, they still exist. This is another thing that I learned like in 2008. Don't have it here. It's, I want to say it's a UI page. Is it a UI page? I can remember how these were put together. If it's a UI page, it's obviously not going to show up on Portal. But, no, what you get. Is it a form layout? I'm trying to remember this. This has been a long time since I've had to deal with these. What you get when you go to sysapproval approver.list is your list of approvals. And you can see this one is for a change record. So if I open this up, it gives me some details down here about the change request. It says summary of item being approved. There's something on this form that is showing that. And if I say configure form layout, it will tell me that there is an approval summarizer. It's a UI macro. But that summarizer is smart enough to say, okay, that was a change record. Let's look at something else. It finds us something else. Hopefully I don't have 663 change records. Find something else. Let's group by approval for. That'll make it easier to find something other than a change request. I've got some change, standard change. Okay, well, whatever. And it has, come on, down here, that is the proposal. I clicked right into the record. I did not go to the approval. Shame on me. So standard change, there. Different summarizer. So the approval summarizer is a UI macro, which comes from a formatter. So if you haven't dealt with formatters before, they're a way to put macros onto a form. And that's also how it's represented in that list. Where it says approval summarizer comes from this. And it says, thou shalt use a type formatter of this UI macro. So I should have a master approval summarizer out here under UI macros called that. And I don't. Interesting. Approval summarizer default, approval summarizer SC request. So these are the individual ones. Again, this isn't helping with that service portal question very much, but I want you to understand what summarizers are and where they are manifested. Because that default macro that goes in and says, hey, is there a specific one? Otherwise, I'll show you a generic one. Kind of like tasks form layout or list layout. But if you put approval summarizer underscore table name, you can make your own summarizer. What fields do you want on there? Here's one for a request. So if you see a request, it's got a little bit of code in here. These aren't the simplest things to write, like most jelly code, but you can make your own tables and fields and take an existing one, modify it to what you need. You're probably going to just modify a few cells in this table to say, I'd rather have this field than that field, but start with an existing one and modify it from there. And you can make your own little summary section in an approval record. That's not the case for Service Portal. Again, I'd have to dig into what that page is displaying, what widgets are on that page, and what those widgets are doing. Haven't done that yet. This part I have done before. So with 5 minutes left, let's see what else we can find in here. I do have something in the inbox that needs following up on, according to that little indicator at the top of the page. And hey, we got a question mark correct. Oop, I didn't want to go to his profile. I want to go to this posting. Thank you, Johannes. Back. Come on, community. Let's go to the right page. Inbox. Wow. Navigation this morning is troublesome for me. Loading. I am subscribed to that one, so I can let that go. Back to the inbox. Back to this posting. So the question came in. It said, if I am using gs.debug function in a scoped application, where do I go to see the output that was printed by this function? Excellent question. Excellent question. And I've wondered this myself. For instance, if I use gslog, you go to the system logs and you see that output. But with gs.debug, gsinfo, that kind of thing, you're not going to see it. So what I found, and this may not be the only way, it's the way I know because this is the way it started working. Now I know some functionality has changed. Let's go back to Studio and take up my CLS 528 app, my sandbox punching bag, server development, business rules, load the scratch pad. I want to deactivate some of these. They're kind of getting in the way. Record updated. Deactivate that. Set default business rule. Deactivate that. And incident commented. I'm not even sure what this is doing in here. It's not even the right application. But anyway, proof that you can put a business rule that impacts a global record. So let me create a new business rule. Probably some client scripts in there I need to disable as well, but we'll continue on. And debug test. I want to get this going. Anytime a record is inserted or updated, in fact, let's do advanced because we're going to need some script. We'll do a before. We can put a condition on here. Advanced condition current.active. We'll just say that real simple. And gs.info, this script is active, or this record is active. Okay, I can even make it easier to spot for myself by doing that, and I save that. So I've got a business rule that's going to run whenever one of these fictitious records that's not listed here in the person table is updated. So it's that one. I can barely see it, but I can see it. Let's go back to this CLS 528 persons table, update a record, and say, hey, Craig, I'm going to update your social security number from this to this. And I save. And you go, well, where's the debug output? If I say debug business rule, it brings up the script debugger. This is as of New York. Okay, so look for it there. And in the session log, I can do it again and say, let's change the order to 100. Save. Did anything pop up there? It said I went into the debug test and I came out of the debug test, but there's no output on there. I would like to see, there's my info messages. It's not there. Why don't I see it? Well, what I discovered once upon a time was if you go into System Applications, and you used to be able to click All, and it would bring you to a straight up list of your system applications. Now it brings you to the application client to say what's installed, what's not. What I found in here that's a little easier to understand is I go to sys under app.list. This is where it used to take you. And in there is the record for my scoped app, which is editable because I'm in the correct scope right now. Down here, it says enable session debug, which means on the standard listen forms, come on, there we are. And it should switch over to disable. Yeah. Okay. If I go back to my person record and update Craig's age to 51 and do a save, now when I look down here, I've got not just my debug that was on before, but I also have my GS info statements should be in here, but they're not. They're supposed to be, but they're not. And here's the next set of things in my debug log. I can tell the business rule is running because it goes in and comes out. If it were skipped, it would say equals, equals, equals. So this demo did not work as expected. Back in Studio, I know it's running. I've got a GS info. I know it's missing a semicolon, but that shouldn't preclude it from running. Current.active is true. And it even said in the script log, execute before business rule, before engines or 1000. Let me look at debug business rules details. Don't think that's going to make much difference here, but let's change that to a 1. Still do a save on that. And did my log show anything new? Skipping user query, went into debug test. Interesting. It is not showing any info statements. Is it showing any info statements down here? Find. No. Huh. I've done this 1,000 times before. Very interesting. I'm going to have to dig into that. Where do those debug statements go? Please check your business rule. Yeah, I thought I did. Close these out. Debug test is active advanced on the person table. When to run, before any insert or update. No condition here. There's no actions there. There's advanced here, which just says current.active. I probably don't even have an active field. Let's try that. Just unconditionally run this script. I thought I had an active field. I usually put them on a lot of tables. There is an active field. Okay. So I saved that, right? I saved that. And change his age to 52. Save it. Find. Nope. It should be right between these two. The debug test going in and the debug test going out. Interesting. That's where it's supposed to be. I don't know where it's going, and I don't know why it's not. And I don't know why it's not in here either, because it should be in both of these. So to turn on session debugging, select all, business rules details. This is much easier than the other way. I kind of like this new debugger in New York that has the session log on it. Very happy, but Normally, I don't output things like this to the screen because a lot of stuff I do is asynchronous. What I'll do is I'll put the debug statements into a script include, test those, unit test those in script's background, or as you saw earlier with Explore, to make sure that they're doing the right inputs and outputs, and I get my debug statements. Then I'll comment out the debugs because I don't need them after I've tested it. Then just run the code. I trust that little piece of code in the script include implicitly to be called from a business rule or UI action or wherever. So that brings us past the top of the hour. I appreciate you joining me and invite you to come back. I'm not sure what's going on with the screen in the background. We've got some lighting effect going on. That's kind of fun. But I will talk to you again next time. Until then, take care, learn something, share something, be helpful to others, and we'll talk real soon. Bye.